All right. So it's 6:10. So let's begin our meeting. I think we've got Julianne here. We got Tim, who's joined us as staff. We got Ben, and we got Josh. What's going on? How are you? Everybody want to say, just check in and say hello since we're starting now.
Hello.
Good evening. How's it going?
Cool. All right. So, Timothy, any notes or anything we should just be mindful of as we start, or anything worthwhile? We're just going to go through the sections within our space and then sort of look back. We're going to go through those 3 articles. We've already sort of gone through the comptroller, and then sort of go back and make sure we haven't missed anything and sort of keep moving forward.
Yes, that's correct, Terrell. I think that's a solid way for us to get the meeting started and to move forward. From a timeline perspective, just to make sure everybody's on the same page, I do need to pull up the schedule, but I believe when we reviewed at the last meeting, we have another meeting, or this committee has another meeting that's scheduled for next week, at which there will be some agency presentations and finalizing recommendations. And then I believe it's the following week that the committee should be prepared to present recommendations to the larger commission. So just wanted to put that little bit of timeline out there for us to be mindful of, and I think we're good to go to begin.
Okay. Cool. Sounds good for me. All right. So we can start with franchises, which I was really excited about. I don't know. Please forgive me for my excitement in that. Forgive me. That's all I can say. It was not as exciting as I thought it was. So I went through it. There wasn't anything that jumped out with me. There was one note in there. I may just turn on the page. So that's Article 8, and that is section. I'm just going to go to Article 8. Article 8, the biggest one was under duration, section 3, Article 8, section 3, they, in that second paragraph under duration, it says him, same to him. And so I feel like we could change that to make it gender appropriate. So that was the one thing that came out for me in here.
That's a good catch.
And then under section 1, it said to be declared inalienable. I don't know if that's this is I don't know if that matters or if there was anything else in that. But nothing else caught my attention really. And yeah, nothing else caught my attention. Yeah, nothing else caught I wonder if section 5, trackless trolleys. I don't know if that's necessary. I don't know that we still have trackless trolleys.
Are they in Fed Hill or Fells Point or Fells? I think I'm thinking Fells. Are those trackless trolleys? I don't know.
There's nothing that operates on overhead lines other than the streetcar museum.
Okay.
But I don't know if that would impact the streetcar museum.
So nothing else jumped out at me. I'm just jumping over to, I'm looking for Article 8 in the 2018 section. Article 8, franchises. So in Article 8 of the 2008 final report, they actually take out street railways, trackless trolleys, and advertising. So I would recommend that we do that, and then the other one would be to note in the section or where the gender specific. I think that's section 3.
Is there anything we're missing? Like, was there something in here that other people have noticed or complained about that I'm just totally missing. I just felt like maybe there's something in there that I'm missing that maybe people who work for the city know.
I don't see, and I wonder if we ask that specifically if about that, but there wasn't anything that jumped for me about here. Actually, let me go back here. I feel like there was one I missed on notice here.
I mean, I think the first section, authority to grant, is sufficiently broad that if, you know, I don't know, whatever the next internet is that suddenly becomes a utility that we don't even know about right now, would probably be covered by that. I am a little concerned about pulling out section 6 on advertising in terms of, I think that notice of public action is always useful in terms of transparency. So I don't know. I don't have the 2018 in front of me, but that would be one concern of mine for pulling out any sort of advertising requirement. There is in the sections that I focused on, there are requirements for to publish in 2 daily papers, and that's essentially impossible, I think, at this point. But the requirement here for 1 daily newspaper, we do still have 1 daily newspaper, at least for the foreseeable future.
I'm looking for that now. I'm looking for the for that section, like Article 9.
I was on page 234. You were talking about pulling out 4, 5, or the last Charter Commission recommended pulling out 4, 5, and 6, I think, unless I was looking at the wrong section.
Yeah, it looks like that's the 4, and I'm wondering about. I just want to make sure. I can't seem to find the proper 85, page 5. There it is. Oh, it looks like that's the only section there that they did. Article 5 franchises. Looks like they only did that one, which was yeah, those 3, section 4, 5, and 6 they took out. And the only thing I would have is that section 3 correcting the gender about him. But nothing else caught me. Like, I mean, we can ask folks. I feel like the duration, they have 25 years in here a little bit, so I imagine that's a reasonable contract thing. But we can ask. Yeah. They take out advertising. So that's all the ones I got. Julianne, did you have anything else? Anybody else?
Absolutely not.
Okay. All right.
No.
So we're taking out. So we're recommending the 2018. 2018 Article 3, and then basically Section 3, which is the duration, and seeing if we can take out that. We're asking Law Department if we can do under Section 3 him, the same to him. Section 3. Section 3, paragraph 2, him. Okay. All right. Now let's go to what was next? 7. Do we have 7 or what did we have? Oh, 6, Board of Estimates. Okay. Let's go to Article 6, Board of Estimates. Anything? Who's that? Board of Estimates is Aaron. No, Ben. You got Ben? Ben, you got 6. All right.
Yeah.
What's you thinking?
So I sent out an email on January 22nd, but I will just remind us what I went through in that. I don't think that there's a ton that needs to be fixed here. I think there's some things that I might have a preference for, but to my mind, there was in 6(1)B, and I'm like turning my pages to actually get to that part, but section 6(1)B, there's a discussion about when the mayor and city council have to call or are supposed to call the board to a meeting. I thought, there might be a need to just have that meeting be automatic, but I imagine that I doubt that the Board of Estimates has never not been called into session by the mayor and city council. So, I don't feel strongly about that one. I think that the layperson looking at kind of the timeline overall here might want the Board of Estimates to have more time to do their work, but they're really up against a couple of different hard calendar realities about when the state finishes its budget in early April, and the fact that the council needs enough time to do its due diligence on the budget before passing it prior to the start of the fiscal year, July 1st. So I think it strikes a good balance of spreading that timeline out, even though it's as much as they can within a compressed reality of those two dates. In several places, Article 6 talks about the firefighters union specifically. To my mind, I'd probably rather we talked about city employees generally instead of a specific fire union. I think, if I recall correctly, though, that was a specific action taken by the city council within recent history to force the city to settle a dispute with the fire union. So I think from a political, thinking about the political realities of that, it doesn't feel like it rises to something where you have to fix. And I think there's enough recent history there that there would be some resistance to changing the language there because of that recent history. There was, I'm like going back and forth between my email and my paper copy here. In section 5B, on the contingent fund, I personally, thinking about, again, the layperson reading this, I found it a little ambiguous, and this maybe is a question for staff. Where is this section allowing the board to set aside $1 million in contingency funds in total or per agency? And if I was being very technical, I might also suggest that we change that to a percentage rather than a dollar amount so that it grows as inflation reduces the buying power of a set amount. That's my very technical observation there, but I do have a question about if it's the contingency set aside is for $1 million total or $1 million per agency, and that's probably a question for the legal department. Section 6A and section 11C both talk about 2 daily newspapers needing to be notified, so that's one area where I don't know what we do if that's physically impossible to comply with at this point. Do we need, what does that mean? Who's enforcing this? Is the city going to get in trouble if it's only publishing it in one spot? I don't know. But that might be something we need to fix and reduce to one, since I'm unaware of a second daily newspaper in the city. I suppose one other option would be to move to 2 weekly papers that come out at least once a week or something, because there are a few weekly papers, I think, in the city. There is there was in section 8B, and maybe I should just copy this into the chat because I'm making a bunch of specific references or the commission, I'm basically reading out my email from January 22nd, but in section 8B 2I, 8B2I, it talks about excess revenue, and it was not clear to me what an example of that might be, so I wasn't entirely sure how to interpret that section and whether or not it was adequate or needed to be adjusted. So I was hoping that was a question staff could answer. In section 11, there's a threshold for contracts of $25,000. Again, it doesn't change over time. So is $25,000, which I think was set in 2010, still the appropriate level? That may be. I did not. I was not at the last meeting where I think the comptroller and others presented some of their thoughts. So I don't know if that's something they flagged as being a challenge, but in the broader context of the city's overall budget, $25,000 may or may not be the right floor for contracts now. And then my last two observations were in section 14. It talks about city officials having to be bonded, but it's as a layperson, I don't know what, I know what municipal bonds are. I don't know what it means for a city official to be bonded. And then secondarily, which city officials have to be bonded currently. So
that's an old school term. Only reason I know is because the sheriff previously had to be bonded. It's like an old school. It's sort of like a bond. Like I don't even know what the rationale was, but like the sheriff, I know because of my previous employment that the sheriff has to be bonded. In the 2018 commission report, that section is removed. So I'm okay with that, with removing that.
Yeah, I mean, I think in a time where that may have arisen in a time when the sheriff was more personally responsible for doing their job, then and not protected as much, or the citizenry was not protected as much by a body of law. So I think that probably could be taken out. There also, and then section 17, I think is a duplicate section, unless I'm misreading, although apparently I did not in my notes say which section what it was duplicating.
Yep, 17. So under the 2018 notes, 16 and 17 are removed. And do you mind if we walk through what the 2018 comments?
Sure.
Okay, so under first thing under 2018, section 6, it sort of modernizes as it says notice in a manner that ensures notice to the public, which takes out that stuff from the newspapers. So that's perfect. Then under section A, section B takes out and then it takes out such other categories that may deem advisable. It's because it's duplicative language. And then that takes care of section 6. Next is 11. It amends that under section B to the Board of Estimates shall recommend, and takes out some other language. Set the dollar threshold. And then it adds two section B, section 11, B2, it adds in, unless an ordinance establishes different thresholds is passed by 2/3 city council members within the date of the recommended dollar threshold. Then 3 takes out old language. 1, similarly. And then section 2 under 3 similarly updates that date. And then under formal advertisement under C under 3 or C under section 11, it takes out a bunch of like the electronic notice and just says in a manner that ensures adequate public notice. And then it moves it from 90 to 120 days. And then under emergencies, it adds a couple other stuff. And then there are a bunch of technical changes going forward. fucking technical and like other simple things. And then it removes the bond, and then it removes 16 and 17. So if everyone else is okay with it, I'm also okay moving along with the recommendations from 2018, and which I think encapsulate your recommendations too.
I feel like I need to like go through and compare the text, but I think in principle that makes sense, and it sounds like they're covering the same ground. And so with that kind of in mind, we're not voting on text of recommendations in this moment. That would make sense to me.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to do that and then let us know sort of where you are? You can reply by email, just saying, hey, it matches up, or it does not, or do you want to sort of come back to this and just confirm? I mean, I wonder if we've got a little less than most folks here today. I mean, I think if we sort of make these recommendations and then we sort of have a broader committee with the recommendations categorized, we can sort of mention it at that next point. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I can take the time. I have a little bit more time to devote to this. That I could take the time to compare the 2018 recommendations with my observations and make sure that there's an alignment there, and then we can either discuss or forward to the larger commission. That's fine.
Okay. All right, cool. Hey, Tim, could you just note that, well, that's what we're going to do. We're going to compile these right now, and then we'll have one more session where everybody confirms that's what we want to do, where hopefully it's like I'm going to call it all hands on deck. And then Ben, you can sort of confirm that this is what you thought and it matches up. And then we would move from there sort of as like a final, I'm going to say or sort of like ratifying or whatever we want to use. Does that make sense?
Terrell, if I could just butt in for 1 second. So I took that note down about compiling a list of recommendations now, ratifying later. I apologize, but it looks like the servers in City Hall are down, so I lost connection for a healthy chunk then of your feedback. But I think I came in back on the tail end where it was mentioned that we would be recommending, or you would be recommending, the 2018 suggestions for this section?
Yeah, including the 2018 sections. I mean, it's my recommendation generally that for all of these, like the next one is last, basically the comptroller, I recommend that we include the 2018 too, in addition to what we also have.
So, Timothy, I need to review the 2018 to make sure that it aligns with the notes that the comments I was making, but I've committed to do that and get back to the committee. I did, in that course of that, have several questions for staff, and I don't know, were you on the original email? Does not look like you were.
So the two questions that I heard were related to, and I don't have answers for either of these two at this moment, but I can definitely get them and email them, about the contingent fund and also about examples of excess revenue under Section 8. Were there any others that I missed? Because that was kind of right where it cut out for me after excess revenues.
Sure. So I think the other question I had was around what it meant for a city official to be bonded, and I think Terrell was able to generally answer that, and it's something that the 2018 recommendations suggested pulling out as archaic. I guess the other question I had right at the beginning was just if there's ever been an example of the mayor and city council failing to call the Board of Estimates to a meeting, since they're in Section 1, it's not automatic, or there's not a deadline by which they have to call it or anything like that. They're conceivably could choose not to call it. I think that'd be highly unusual, but I was just curious if there'd ever been an example of that. I think
Okay.
those were the questions I had.
To my knowledge, there hasn't been an example of that in history, but I will do some research on those three and get answers to the committee by tomorrow.
Yeah. And, if you get, if you look at the last 75 years and you can't find anything, like you don't have to go back all the way to the beginning of the city. But I'm just curious if in modern history, like that's been a thing.
Sounds good.
All right. And then the other ones, hey, Tim, could you check just to make sure that the comptroller's office is okay with the proposals from 2018?
That's a good question.
Certainly.
Okay. So I'm adding that in. In my book, I still have my loose leaf notebook, and so I've added each of these in. So if you can just confirm that those there, I believe we've heard from the comptrollers, and so if we can just include that in, and include those in, and then otherwise, I think we sort of covered that part. I think Aaron and the comptroller both spoke and sort of included their conversation. So if we can just conclude that, we'll add those in. I think we otherwise have this covered. And then so I think the next step is to run this by with everyone after we hear from presentations next week, to sort of have this combined into one document with the recommendations, make sure we all agree, and then as a committee ratify it. Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me.
Cool. Julianne, you good? Julianne, I'm sure you're finishing up something, so I'm going to presume, unless you say you're not, you're good. Doris, are you okay? Does that make sense for you? And if you don't say okay, I'm going to presume it's good for you. What about you, Josh? You good?
Yeah, it's good. And I apologize. I'm on double duty on daddy duty right now, but I have been listening in.
Dude, we've flown. We all have been. Ben is too.
So, but yeah, no, that sounds good.
Okay, awesome. So I think so it sounds like we got a plan. We've got a lot. We got this done. I think we're ready to move ahead. So after the meeting next week, we confirm our next scheduled time, and then we'll be able to sort of have this organized. Tim, will someone in staffing the committee, will they combine this into a space for us? Is that able to be done?
Yes, it can be done.
Okay, terrific. And so if we can combine this, if you can also send that out with the 2018, what we've said so far, and if it's helpful for you, you and I can jump on a call real quick and just make sure we got everything. Whatever's easier for you, just feel free to let me know. And then if we can send that out ahead of our meeting next week, that would be terrific. And then from there, as a group, we can ratify this. Everybody good with that? Unless somebody says no, I'm going to say we're ready to move forward and we can adjourn. All right, cool. Any final thoughts?
The only thing that I have is, will we be able to do a side-by-side comparison to see the changes in like Google Docs? Is usually you can do suggest changes where we'll see it, or highlight the versions, or track changes in Words where we get like uploaded side by side.
So it's what I'm presuming, based on the 2018 final report document, I'm presuming that the staff will have a similar organized document based on these things. So I can find out, but it should be something similar where it's like in the 2018, they show what they're taking out and they show what we're doing. They do that legislative edit sort of writing. And so I presume that we'll have the same thing.
Yes, Terrell, that's correct. That's exactly how we'll present it.
Is that good for you, Josh?
That works for me.
All right, cool. All right, we move through this. Unless, can we adjourn? Everybody all right with that?
Move to adjourn.
Second. Oh, perfect. All right, I think we're good. Have a wonderful night.
Have a great night.
Someone else say something? Julianne, did you say something?
Thank you.
No, I just said
All
have
right,
a great
take care.
night.
Thanks. Bye-bye.